Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of the Action Sci-Fi Fantasy Creators Lounge. I am your host, Barry Gaines of Gaines Entertainment, as well as the writer, director, and producer of the hit series A World of Worlds that you can see on Amazon Prime, Google Play, SoFi.tv, Binge Horror, and soon to be Green Apple Entertainment. So please subscribe so we can continue to do this. And today I have somebody who's a credit to our industry. This gentleman has already given us a Hollywood film. I'm quite sure a lot of you have seen it. And it's, to me, when I first saw it, I didn't know what to expect, and I was just kind of blown away. I love movies like this. It was edge of your seat. It was consistently going. Besides, you had Rob Cohen as director. So, you know what? Forget about that. Let me have my man tell you all about it himself. So the writer of Hurricane Heist is with us, Mr. Scott Windhauser. Scott, how you doing, brother? How's everything
Good.
going?
How are you, man? How's everything going?
Good. Yo.
We're about to be crushed by the biggest storm of the century.
Get the money.
That thing wants to swallow us whole.
Absolutely. I like the backdrop.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm trying to work on it. You know,
I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
I like it. It's like Avatar a little bit.
Yeah, trying to keep it the whole sci-fi thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But tell me, man. I mean, listen. You know, we all know how writers are, like in the industry. You know, I'm a writer. Thank goodness I'm a director and producer, so they can see my face. And you're a director yourself, but you know, you're a writer as well. And you know, right now, I think a lot of people know of you because of the Hurricane Heist. You know, you had a good promotion. The movie, you had a big director on it, made some coin, and you know, that's like your baby, man. You wrote that. So but before we even get into that, man, I think people want to know, how did you start? Like, what? So tell us about Scott Windhauser. How did it all begin for you?
Yeah. Thanks. I grew up in LA. That's why I'm wearing this hat. I'm a huge Laker fan, so it's the Dodgers, but it's got the Laker colors in it. So I'm excited for the NBA to start again. But I went to film school out in LA. I went to Cal State Northridge, and then I got out of school and I didn't really know anybody in the business, and I got the back of Variety actually, and they had jobs there. So I went to a place that I used to deliver pizzas to, actually.
Nice.
Back then it was called Live Entertainment, but now you know it as Artisan. And I got a job there. Yeah, I got a job there interning, and then I was an assistant. And it was like it was better than film school in a way because you learn the business so much. And they did a lot of like low budget, like Dirty Dancing 2 and Wishmaster and Substitute 2, like all these movies that were like programmed for cable and video and DVD back then. And then we got bought out by Bill Block, who was a big agent at the time, and then he became producer. And they fired everybody in the film department.
Oh, damn.
And yeah, we knew it was coming too. It was a funny thing. And I asked everybody where I should work, and they said, go work at a talent agency. And I knew my boss at the time was dating an agent at CAA. And I talked to his assistant every day over there. This girl, Heather Courtney, who was totally helped me out in my career. She's a total sweetheart.
Big up to her. Okay.
Yeah, big up to Heather. I got a job over there working in the feature lit department for an agent who became a producer now, Jim Lefkowitz. He's still a friend of mine. And you hit the ground running because the old assistant wasn't even there. So I had to like learn on the fly. And that place was bumping. Like you were there 18 hours a day.
Wow.
So that was a big learning curve. And I went to film school to be a director. I wasn't a writer at the time, but I read as many scripts as I get my hands on. And these are stuff that was being made. And it wasn't like people in film school, they're like, this is my first script, that those suck. These are like, studio films. So I read everything I could, and then I wanted to work for a director. I thought that was the way to go. And Michael Bay was the biggest at the time. So I went to go work for Michael Bay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
Basically, I'm a big fan of Michael Bay, so I'm all ears.
yeah. Well, it's funny that anyone that makes fun of Michael Bay doesn't really know him, because Michael Bay he has such an amazing eye, and he's so good at what he does that he's light years ahead of people in terms of he can see everything way faster than you. So if you know, people are like, well, he's tough or whatever. He's not tough. He's just he knows what he wants right away, and the guy can get like 90 setups in a day because he's going. He knows exactly what to do, and his stuff cuts together. Anyways, the first day I was there, they said, "Do you have any movie ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to do a love triangle that culminates on the day of Pearl Harbor." So then they ended up making Pearl Harbor based on my idea.
Get out! All right,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah,
man, but listen, so this is Scott's really his idea now. So
yeah, yeah. Michael and I joke about that once in a while when I see him, but I wasn't a writer. I became the story editor over there. And I worked for someone named Jennifer Klein, who ran the company. She's a producer, and she's still a friend. She's a really good producer. And so they made the movie, and I worked with Randy Wallace, who wrote Braveheart too. And it was really cool to see it was like $130 million movie being made.
Yeah.
And that was cool to see. And then I knew I wanted to go. I wasn't on set that much for that, so I wanted to go work for a director on location, and it fell in my lap kind of that Harold Becker, who's he's been around. He's old, I guess you call him an old school director right now, but he's been around forever, and he did like Sea of Love, Taps, Vision Quest, Malice.
Right.
Yeah, he was a big commercial director and photographer. He was going to do a movie called Domestic Disturbance, so I went and did that with John Travolta and Vince Vaughn in Wilmington.
What year was that? Was that the 90s? Right?
I'll tell you exactly what it was, because it was 2000, and then we got back to Paramount. We were editing, and then we had to go back for reshoots in Wilmington, and then 9/11 happened.
Oh, I
so
see.
literally we flew from LAX to Raleigh the Sunday after 9/11 to start the reshoots. And that was like the craziest airport experience of my life, because of obviously it was just a horrific thing, but they had no idea how to run the airports after that. So like I remember it was 2 hours outside in a line in September in LA, blazing hot, with all your luggage just to get in the airport. But
right.
So we did that movie, and then I worked for Harold for years, and Harold was he was a different kind of storyteller than Michael, because Michael's more spectacle. And, you know, Harold's more about thriller and like a little bit more intricate story. It's more the human experience. So I worked with him for a long time, and then I just started writing out of, I think it's out of necessity, because I was like, no one's going to let me direct $1 million or $2 million or $5 million movie without like an amazing reel, or like, you know, the Sixth Sense spec script that I wrote. So I started writing, and I started off doing like the Michael Bay kind of stuff. And I did I wrote a movie called Free Fall, and it was Die Hard on the International Space Station. It was like $150 million.
Wow. Nice. And you wrote that, right?
I wrote that, and then Arnold Kopelson, the producer, was going to make it. He did Platoon and Seven. He's a prolific producer. Wow. He was going to do it, and he was going to do it at Paramount. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm in, Variety. I got an interview with Variety, and I was like, great. But literally the next day, and this is like the Hollywood story, they cast Gravity with Sandy Bullock and Clooney, and Paramount dropped my movie like a hot potato. And they didn't even do the contract yet, so I didn't make money on it. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I was like holding on to that one script that writers do. And then somebody was like, you should write indies. And I was kind of like, I was working for Harold for a while. I knew I had to do something else. So I was like, and I sat down, and I literally just started. That was like 2013. And I just started writing. And
Yeah.
Between now and 2013, I've written about 100 movies.
Wow.
So I just kind of, I just sat down and I did one, and then I was like, okay, on to the next. And, slowly but surely they got out there.
How many of the 100 actually got out into Britain?
I think I looked it up the other day. I think it was about like 39 of them I've been like either hired to write, or they were optioned, or they're in some sort of development right now, or they've been made. So I've been lucky in terms of getting exposure, because I think that the thing I tell writers all the time is, don't write your like passion little like project about owning a pet store and going after I don't know, a tree or something. You know what I mean? You got to write something that's like that action sells. You
right.
know.
Exactly.
So I wrote a bunch of like either action thrillers or action or that kind of stuff, and then I got to make one of my lower budget movies I got to make was called Cops and Robbers.
That has Michael Jai White, right?
Yeah, Michael's in it, and
Michael Jai White. For people don't know who Michael Jai White is, he is Spawn. If you remember Spawn,
yeah,
Spawn.
He's also the guy in Dark Knight who, when they have the big meeting with Heath Ledger, he's like, "Enough of the clown." And Michael is probably one of the toughest people I've ever met in my life, because he's been doing martial arts since he's like 15. He is ripped. Like, dude, I would never mess with the guy. I wouldn't even look at him sideways, but he's like the nicest guy. He's like a total family man, and he's really smart, and we got along really well. And in all the movies he did before that, or a lot of his movies, I should say, he does, he's a nice guy. He's kick and punch. And I had him do, it's kind of funny for now, but Cops and Robbers is based, it's about two brothers who they're on either side of a bank standoff. One's a cop and one's a robber, and they're going at it about their childhood pretty hot and heavy over the intercom and the phones and everything, and they hate each other. One of them sent one of the other ones to prison, but that movie was all about these two brothers were getting revenge on a corrupt white police department. So that's kind of
close to today.
Yeah. So
he was already hitting the mark before the mark was getting hit.
Yeah.
People who want to see that, they can go to IMDb. You can see the trailer there if you guys want. Yeah. So if you go to Scott Windhauser on IMDb, you're going to be able to see that and other trailers that he's done, and also his.
It's on cable somewhere too.
Is it?
That one's on cable. I'm proud of that one because it's the first one, but Michael and Rampage did a really good job. And then
Rampage doesn't get his credit due. He is a good actor, man. I mean, he really is. So
that guy too. He's tough. He's tough too.
No, before you get into that with Cops and Robbers, I really wanted to ask you something about that one.
Yeah.
Because were you able to cast yourself? Were you able to say, "Hey, listen, I really want Michael. I really want Rampage. Can we get these guys somehow?"
Well, what's funny is that for that movie, I did it with this guy Michael Tadros and Ron Robinson, who Ron is a producer too, works all the time, but Ron is actually also Ja Rule's manager, and Ja Rule was going to play a part in the movie, and it didn't work out. I forget what happened, but we had Rampage, and we were getting closer to production. And I was like, we got to get Michael Jai White. Like, they would be perfect because, Rampage is such a big, imposing guy that you need somebody on the other end to be that. You can't have somebody be smaller and demure, and that you have to have somebody that's like, so they can bump heads. And we were lucky enough to get Michael, and Michael, I thought did a great job because it was very cerebral, that movie, and it was just about their back and forth, and there's a lot going on that if you hopefully you watch it twice, you go, that's what they were doing, because there's a lot of moving parts that don't come together till the end. Okay. And I like that script. I like that script very much, actually. And then that trailer started getting out, and I started getting a bunch of rewrites, and that's when things really start to take off, I think.
Now, when you write, like this is just to ask you about this.
Yeah.
Being that you had, like, say, like the big films you have so far, like of course, Hurricane Heist, and Cops and Robbers, and another one, Dead Trigger. Those that you wrote. Let's start with Hurricane Heist first. With that one being as the largest one, were you able to kind of put your own input? Like, after you wrote it, were you able to go on set or maybe say, hey, listen, let's keep this dialogue? If did you have any input?
Well, it's funny. So my Hollywood story is I guess it would be Hurricane Heist, because they sent me the script. There was a script originally from like the 90s, and these guys wrote it. And I forget their names, but they were really sweet guys. But I couldn't get through the script. It was all one-liners, because it's very like everyone was like Bruce Willis in like the 90s in the script.
Right.
And I read to about page 25, and I put it down, and then I got a phone call that Rob Cohen wanted to meet, and I was like, oh, okay. I thought we were just gonna like talk about like what like kind of basic general stuff about the film, because I wasn't hired or anything. And so I went to his house, and I pull up, and like five sets of producers are there, and I was like, uh-oh. And so I sat down with everybody, and Rob's there. And then like literally there's bagels on the table, big conference table. And they go, okay, so what did you think of the script? And I was like, uh-oh, I didn't read it. So I said, can I be honest? And I was like, I just got to go for it here. And this is the Hollywood part. And they said, yeah. And I said, it's fucking terrible. And Rob kind of stood up and was like, thank you. And I said, it's not today's thing. It's a 90s movie. It hasn't been touched in like 2 decades. So they're like, cool. And then they said, how would you do it? And I had to come up with it on the spot, and I did.
Nice.
And then they said, I write pretty fast. And they said, how long for this script? And Rob went out to take a phone call, and I looked at the other producers, and I said, 2 weeks. And then Rob came back in and said 2 weeks for the outline. I said, no, I'll give you a script in 2 weeks. And we made the deal that day, and I gave it to him in 2 weeks.
Nice.
And I sat down with Rob. Rob's done everything. He's been in the music business. Like the guy's been like, his credits are like off the charts. But we sat down, and he did a teaser trailer that was like, the movie 2012, like it was so like big. And so when I was doing notes with him, I said, you want to go that big? He's like, go as big as you can. So I was like, okay. And so some of the stuff that's not in the movie, we did like some big stuff, but and then they took the movie to Germany, to the Berlin Film Festival, with Rob attached. There was no actors yet, and just the script, and they got like 13 million in pre-sales. So really? That was a huge, yeah.
Well, Rob Cohen doesn't hurt,
No, no. I have no. I know it was Rob's name, but I know the script helped.
Right.
And so we came back, and I worked on it for a little bit longer, and then I went off and did like a ton of other movies, because they were like setting it all up, and it took like on and off for like a year. But they went and shot the movie in Bulgaria.
And how did they shot the movie? Yeah,
the whole movie's in Bulgaria. There's the technology now where you can see it in The Mandalorian, where like they have these 360-degree rooms with screens.
Right.
So they did a lot of they put the car on a gimbal, like the Dominator, and then they project. They took actual hurricane footage in Florida.
Wow.
And yeah, and they projected actual hurricane weather around them when they're in the Dominator. So it's not a green screen. It's actually the actors can see it. So they did that in England.
Nice.
Yeah, they did that in England, but they did most of the stuff in Bulgaria. And then they did. There was I think it took 8 or 9 months. I don't know how long it was for the special thing.
So is it like screens around them, pretty much?
It's like a big circle.
Big circle, right? And the actors are in the middle.
Yeah, and they're 30 feet high. So they're like, you
wow.
can shoot every which way unless you go like this. You can shoot everywhere. You can shoot all the way around them, and it's like they're reacting to it.
That is
So,
right.
and they did that on The Mandalorian. They're going to do it a lot more now. I think it just because the green screen stuff is great, but this is cheaper, I think. So, so they did that. But so I went off and I did like I wrote a movie called Tsunami LA, which is a 1,000-foot wave hits LA that they wanted to make a long time. They had different actors in it. I directed that movie Dead Trigger with Dolph Lundgren, and I wrote like probably 10 other movies in between when I first wrote Hurricane Heist to when they finally finished it. But like what your question was a lot of the stuff stayed. Rob added some stuff in the movie, but Rob's been a writer. He's been everything. So like when you're working with somebody like that, you know, especially when you're newer in the business at that level, you're like, you kind of defer to them. You're like, okay, well, you know, and then you see the final product, you say, I wish that, you know, you wish your babies were in there all the time. But
yeah,
I think a lot of the stuff, all the action was all me.
I mean, I think was it called Hurricane Heist in the beginning? Was it always called Hurricane Heist?
No, it was actually called Category 5. So we had that for a long time, and then Byron Allen bought it in Entertainment Studios, and they changed it to. They wanted the title to mean more of what was going on in the film. So I guess now you really know what's going on in the film.
Know, that's good. But you know, funny, everything you just told me, like from the time you started, everybody you met, what you've gone through so far. Out of all that, was there anyone that influenced you? Someone that said, you know what, if it wasn't for this person, man, that's the one that really struck a chord with me, that kind of helped me continue or just helped me know what I'm doing or what I want to do?
You know, I've been lucky, you know, from, you know, like I said, from CAA, from my boss at CAA, even my boss at Live Entertainment, this lady named Yalda Turanian, who was very sweet to me. Michael Bay and Harold Becker, definitely. Just watching them, you know, it's funny to just observe those kind of people who have, you know, quote unquote made it, or, you know, A-listers or whatever, because I think when you go to film school, there's like this, you think like, oh, you're going to get on the set and there's this big whole, it's a whole thing. And it is, but it's all, you know, too. It's like you get there, you frame a shot, you go in, you punch in, boom, 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 then you turn around and boom, 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 out. So I think that learning that stuff, and I think for writers, learning how the set works and how you shoot stuff helps too for how you write stuff. Because if you have too much minutia in a scene, it's going to take days to shoot that. You got to get cut to the quick on a lot of stuff. And I think, you know, those people help me. But I would always say that if it wasn't for, and this just sounds really stupid, but George Lucas, Spielberg, and John Williams, I would not be here, because they, those guys like tapped into my imagination. And when I was a little kid, I always would play with Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
And I realized as I was in college, I went to college started to be an architect, and then I switched because I didn't like all the math. But I realized that when I was always doing scenes with those little figures when I was a kid. And so I was always kind of directing from a very young age. Yeah. And I think that, you know, John Williams' music, because I always write to scores.
Oh, you like me? I do the same thing.
And I met John.
I don't feel alone now. I love doing it.
That's the movie scores, you know, Hans Zimmer too. I mean, he's a modern hero, but because his stuff's so good. But that's kind of where those people, I think, you know, Lucas with Star Wars and everything, having that imagination, you know, Raiders Lost Ark is one of my favorite films. I always used to recreate the chase scene with the truck and everything and try to do the Star Wars figures. So I'm always like, you know.
Well, even when you were young, did you try to rewrite stuff? Did you say, hey, you know what, if I did this, I would want to do this?
No, because when I was a kid, I hated reading and writing. I was literally just a visual person constantly. It's funny. My brother's he's a professor at Temple, but he's also a novelist. He's published a few novels. He's on his third or fourth. But he was a writer. He has MFAs and all. He's really a doctorate. I think I don't want to cut him short, but he's I think he's tenured now. Like he's the gifted grammar person. I'm the guy that's like, thank God for Final Draft, because it's like
you're like me. That's so true.
Yeah.
But you was the wild one. That's what it is. You was the wild brother. Like the brother is just
I had the big concepts and like I can come up with a movie like fast, because it's like, to me, I know everyone knows like the save the cat bullet points or something, but like I'll think of I'm developing a movie right now. It's a volcano movie. It's a disaster movie, but like somebody said volcano to me, and in a day I was like, I have the whole movie, because it's like, okay, because this and this in my mind, you kind of just
that's your talent. It's a gift.
Yeah. Well, I don't tell my wife that, because she'll be like, what talent? But,
that's a gift. Trust me, because I just have to wait, just to say this, because I know a lot of time people who are not in the industry, I'm quite sure you heard of this 1,000 times, but people who are not in the industry will always ask you like the same thing. How do you think about these things? Because to them, they can't fathom it. But I get it, because I'll look at a genius musician, and I went to music school, and I wasn't a musician. I just know how to read and write. Not as much. It's been a while. But I look at the guys who actually can play, and it's amazing to me. Like, yo, how do you know how to? And they're like, it's natural for me. I could pick it up pretty fast. It's just a genius, and that's your genius, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. I mean, look, I tell people this all the time. I didn't have a backup plan. Like, this is it. Like, I'm not a banker. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor, definitely. But I can do this. I know I can do this. I might, I'm not Aaron Sorkin, but I'm proud of some of the stuff I've done, So it's like, you just kind of, you do what I hope everyone like finds what they want to do. And, I've been working like crazy since the pandemic, but I love it. My wife.
Do you prefer to write more than direct, or do you like the combination of being a writer and director? What if you had
I love directing. Directing's like, directing is scarier to me still, because I've only directed 3 movies now. So it's still like a muscle that I'm learning. Like, I could sit down and, I've written a TV pilot in one day. Like, I could do that. Like, that doesn't scare me. If you give me a topic, you're like, somebody hires me for something, I'll give it to you. So that doesn't scare me, because I can hear the dialogue in my head, and I go, okay, this, and then I go back and I twist it around. And that to me is easier. But, when you're doing like a scene with 100 extras and you're like, okay, I got a crane down from this, and you're storyboarding everything, and you have a shot list, but you get there and it's like everything, the actor's 2 hours late, the hair and makeup didn't show up, one of the camera truck broke down, it's not here, so stuff like that, or the actor's hung over and you're like, okay, or the actor wants to talk to you about the scene for 3 hours and you're like, I gotta shoot, and then you have a company move even, so all that stuff is, but it's fun to see, because I've only directed what I've written, so it's fun to like take it from there to there, and then the edit to me is like, it's just they always say you write the movie you want, you direct the movie you have to, and then you edit, whatever that saying is. But
well, it's funny.
You make the movie 3 times.
It's perfect you said that, because I'm about to segue to exactly what you must be reading my mind, because I definitely wanted to get into the editing.
I can do that too. I didn't tell you I could read mine.
You're damn good, brother. Like, this boy's talented. Like, damn.
Yeah, I wish.
But being that you wrote and direct these, and you're doing mostly indie films, which gives you a lot of freedom as opposed to a major studio film. Do you really get into the editing process? Do you really kind of sit down with the editors, or do you edit yourself your films?
No, I you kind of get in a rhythm with them, but you got to let them do their first cut, and then you kind of get in there and you get your hands dirty. But I think as you go, like the 3rd film I just did, Death in Texas, like you get you kind of like you know now on like what everything you shot on set, because you're not as like the first two movies, I think you're more nervous, like because you forget things, like because you're so like the world's closing in on you. And as you get better as a director, the world opens up. So you're like, oh, I know day 3 we did boom, boom, boom. Like, where's that shot? Like, where's that insert? Like so you kind of have it in your head a little bit. And I think that the more you direct, the more you kind of edit as you go. And then, but I think too, like a good editor is worth his weight in gold, because he'll do something and you'll be like, oh, I never thought of that. And I think that that's, you know, having a good editor and having a good DP just save your ass. I mean, I've worked with this guy, Jonathan Hall, who's a great DP twice. And he saves my ass because he's done like 50, 100 movies. I don't even know how many movies he's done. But he like, you kind of go to him and you're like, you know, and I always do like this. So like when people are watching, they're like, look at how smart he is. But I'm just going, Jonathan, what do I do?
He got 4 fingers up. He got what he's doing.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll do this for 10 minutes. And then he'll be like, French overs. And I'm like, yes, let's do those. So, you know,
that's cool. Do you have a DP that you always use? I mean, because I know DP is supposed to be, you know, that's your right hand man. I mean, do you just?
I would use Jonathan Hall any day of the week. Like I've interviewed a bunch of them for other stuff that I almost use, but Jonathan is like, he's one of my best friends. Like he's a really good DP, and he the two things you want in a DP. First, you don't want them to be overly creative, because they're like, well, what if he's gonna? You're like, no. But you want him to be artistically creative in terms of like the lighting and everything, and you want him to not crack under pressure at all. Like he's the coolest guy on set. He's never stressed. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you want him to light fast. If they can light fast, especially when you're doing indie, and it still looks amazing. Like you get your raw footage back and people are like, this looks amazing. And I'm like, oh, wait till it's color corrected. Like that's Jonathan. Jonathan's really good. And Jonathan does a lot of action stuff too.
That's good.
That's
a difference.
He's just very good at his job.
No, wait,
he kind of leaves you.
I'm sorry, no, I'm not cutting you off. No, go ahead.
No, he lets you be your best self. So I think that's cool.
Because what I was thinking of was when you go ahead and get your crew, do you look for people, being that you have an action, most of your stuff is action oriented and things like that, more of a spectacle at some parts. Do you get people who are experienced in those fields? Do you purposely look for, you know, maybe a costume designer or, you know, your AD or whoever it is that, you know, experienced in this field, like in this genre anyway? Do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's like the the pigeonholing, and I hate it from writing and directing too. But you tend to pigeonhole people in terms of if they have like really good action credits, like a prop guy who does really good action movies. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, he's probably good. You know, he's probably good at that. But yeah, I think you should look for somebody in that field, and only because, when you have like an 18 to 22 day shoot or something, you got to hit the ground. You got to do 6 or 7 pages some days. Some days I've done 11 pages in a day, with like 9 principles. Like, so there's a lot. You got to have somebody who's good. And I think that thankfully for me, most of the people that I've worked with crew wise have always been good. And if there's like one bad apple, they get quickly weeded out. Like that's like, they're usually the person that's a problem on set is the person that's not any good, and so they're covering for it with their attitude. But generally, the guys that are really good and know their stuff, or the women, are they're movie people. I don't know how to explain it any better than like.
When they're gonna stick with you, and you know what I mean? Like, you just feel, they're sticking. They're gonna stick. So you're gonna be like, okay, these guys work with me. We work well together. I was wondering too, being that you have these spectacles, some movies are spectacles or action. Do you ever go to Comic-Cons? Do you ever like kind of go to those things and say, hey, they're promoting, I'm going to go there too? And the only reason I ask, because after this interview and people want to kind of meet you, they're like, I don't know where to meet this guy if I want to speak to him besides Facebook or something. But
you never meet. I'm in a bunker. Somewhere.
It's a writer, man. You're a writer. Yeah.
Well, I have my look. I mean, so I write all the time, but or if I'm shooting or editing, but I have my wife and I have a baby girl who's almost a year and a half now. So I got my hands full. Like I got a family, and so if we're not working, we're with the baby. And my wife's an actress, so she's working a lot too. So you should have her on sometime.
Man, I'd love to. Yeah.
She's definitely my better half. You know what I mean? So
I know.
So
you know that
goes. My daughter and my wife are the lookers, and I'm the behind the curtain person.
Yeah.
But then my wife is in my last movie, and so is my baby was in the movie. I put her in a little scene.
Oh, so nice.
Got my baby her SAG card.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You did like a Francis Ford Coppola thing. Remember when he did? His baby baptized for real.
Yeah. That's right.
Film it. That was cool. Yeah. That was really cool. So, and now she's directing movies. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, she's good.
Yeah, but too, you three. I just want to kind of get to this real quick. I don't want to take all your time. So people would know that the Hurricane Heist, Cops and Robbers, Dead Trigger, that they can go out and see right now. Where can they see those? I know they can see, of course, Hurricane Heist on Amazon and all those places, but
Hurricane Heist is on Netflix. I think I did a movie called Larceny with Dolph Lundgren too. I think it's on. I think that's on Netflix as well. And then I did a movie, the Dead Trigger movie. I think that's only on Apple or iTunes or whatever.
Oh, is it? Okay. What other films do you have coming up? If you can actually talk about it.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff coming up once COVID gets, the floodgates open, because a lot of people. Honestly, I think I have like 14 movies in pre-production right now. It's some kind of thing, but we'll see what pre-production is a vague term in this business sometimes. But I have I have a few action things. I have a few TV shows. I have a big one in Europe that's about to be announced that is kind of like a Lucifer kind of show, but it's much more involved, and it's really cool. It's this whole world that's going to open up. That I can't say the name yet, but it's pretty cool. And then I have a couple disaster movies. I have the biggest fire in history movie called Firestorm. Rennie Harlin's going to direct.
Oh wow, haven't heard Rennie in a while. Nice.
Yeah. And that's Millennium's going to do that. And then I have this big ninja movie. Actually,
everyone loves ninjas, man. I love ninjas.
Yeah, this one I'm going to direct it, and it's going to be it's John Wick meets ninja. It's like the John Wick version of a ninja. It's really this one I'm really super proud of, because it has a John Wick style, and it's like a ninja taking on a city full of bad guys because they took his wife and daughter hostage, and so he's he becomes the ultimate ninja. Let the genie out of the bottle.
Nice.
That one's really fun. That one's going to be I'm curious to see how we do that, because it's a big movie, and that's going to be fun. And then I have a bunch of other things that are kind of bubbling to the top, and I'm hoping that I'm doing a lot of movies with Hannibal Pictures.
I heard of them.
They've done a ton of movies. Richard Riondo, he did like USS Indianapolis. He's done like 50 movies probably, I think, but have some with them, and I'm trying to think what else. I have a movie that I wrote, but I'm not directing it. I think they're gonna sign Frank Grillo, so he's gonna be in that. So Frank's gonna do a movie coming up.
You got
So
some good people on it, man. I like that. I mean, you got some really good people. Like if I was there doing that, I probably would pick the same people. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I mean, I'm lucky. I think that, I think that the easy thing is once you kind of have like, Hurricane Heist helped a lot. And, working with like Dolph Lundgren, I've worked with Nick Cage. Um, I've worked with just Michael J. White, like just a bunch of different people, and you just kind of build the relationships that way. And people, so when you read your script, it's like, oh, this guy did Hurricane Heist. They kind of give you that a little extra attention in reading it. So it's like, oh, this guy's never written anything. That I went through that for years. So believe me,
right. I know.
I feel everyone's pain if they're out there listening. I literally had to write 100 scripts to get
Wow.
to where I am
Do
here.
you prefer the indie aspect of filmmaking, rather filmmaking, or does it matter to you at all?
Indie and studio. The only thing different with studios, there are a lot more cooks involved. I wrote a movie for Warner Brothers called Them. It was based on the 1954 ant movie. It's like these giant ants, and there was just it's a lot of politics in that stuff. So like they never made that movie, obviously, but there was just a lot of, there's a lot more hoops to jump through. So the indie route is easier, but that, then presents its own problems because it's harder to get actors and it's harder to get, more days, and you're constantly looking at the clock and money. And, our business went from the DVD boom of the 90s and the early 2000s to now it's all, Netflix and the streamers, which is, those companies are great, but there's so much content right now. There's so many channels and there's so many avenues to get your stuff seen that sometimes it's not seen. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to really come up with something unique and something that, frankly has a star on the poster that somebody's going to see. Otherwise you only get your window is so small to get anyone to see it that you're like,
it's tough. Yeah, I can see it's tough out there. And for people who want to get into it, man, what would you tell them? Like if someone wants to get into writing or directing just to get into this sci-fi,
don't do it.
Deal.
Don't do it. Don't take money out of my pocket.
Just stay home.
Stay home. COVID will get you. COVID will get you.
I hear you, brother. Yeah.
I say this all the time. You have to want it more than anything. Like this has to be like not that you have to be like a movie geek and all that stuff, which I think it helps, but you really have to like say, I can't do anything else. Like if I was like an insurance salesman or like a banker, something, I don't know what it would be. I probably would have folded. I had girlfriends back when I was younger. They're like, well, you should quit because I wasn't getting any traction, but I didn't have anything. That was it. I was like, I'm going to write and direct. And you just have to kind of put your nose to the grindstone. And I tell people too, you should, if you want to be in this business, get in this business. Like go intern somewhere, go work at an agency like I did, go to film school. Like if you're like a bartender in Ohio, which is fine, and you want to be a screenwriter, that's great. But you're so far out of the loop, go, make friends because, people in your college, people at the place you work are going to become the head of places and the producers. And I have a lot of friends that are, producers and writers and big deals now, and it's like we've just been friends for a long time, so it's like we all have the battle scars, but you can call them and say, hey, I have this movie, and they're like, well, let me look at it. They might not always do it or say anything, but you need those, you definitely need those connections. In the movie business, it's all about relationships because it's all ego too, so it's like you got to get into the game somehow.
Just get yourself out there. Just do something.
Start early if you can. Start earlier than I did, but start like go to college and then or finish high school and in the summer try to intern somewhere and just again appeal to people's vanity in this business. Like if you go to a production company, you're like, hey, can I just get you guys coffee? And when you're a kid, you have time to do that shit. And it's like, and if you have a talent or you have a thing, like read all the scripts you can get, like, do your homework, because I think a lot of people, and I'm sure you know this too, they want to be in this business because they want to be famous or rich, but that's not the way to be in this business. You have to literally love the art of making movies, or the business of doing movies, or you have to have a real gift. If you don't, then, just to be famous or to make a lot of money, you can, but it's a long, hard road sometimes. It's not like you show up and you get off a bus and they hand you, an Oscar. That doesn't happen.
So, I know, and a lot of people think that happens. They can just go and dance.
Yeah.
Hey, to me, I did this, and it's like, man, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, man, listen. I want to thank you so much for being on the show, man. I mean, we can just chop it up for days.
Yeah.
It was up to me, it wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
But I know that you got things to do, and you got movies to write, movies to direct, and we want to see what you do. We don't want you in your room. We want to see you out there directing and see your material. So I definitely thank you again, man, for being on the Fantasy Craze Lounge. And I'm really looking out for you, man. Everyone out there too, look out for Scott Windhauser. You see his name, you know it's good. Trust me, I'm not just BS. No one comes on the show unless I really like him. I like this guy. So
hey, do I send you the money via Zelle, or how do I send you the money for that
we're
plug?
supposed to talk about that after.
Oh, I'm sorry. All
right, brother. I'll see you soon, man.
Thank you.
All right. And everyone subscribe. All right.
Subscribe to this man. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.